What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
If you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, or for that matter, just somebody who leads a team or aspires to lead a team, and you're looking for some insights that's going to help you to propel your business, propel you in your career. Today's guest, Jonathan Whistman, is a voice that you just don't want to miss. He's the CEO of WhoHire.com, and when I saw the name of that company, as you know, with my background coming out of executive search and the journey I've been on, I had to meet this guy. And I will tell you, I was not disappointed. I'm really looking forward to hearing his thoughts on this journey that he's on, especially with the new book that just hit the stands literally, I think, was it today, called Unrecruitable.
Today.
Unrecruitable. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Looking forward to our conversation. Just the short conversation we had beforehand. This is going to shape up to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I love this term unrecruitable. In the business of executive search that I was in for 3 decades, I always looked at the people talk about no one's unrecruitable, which is a lie. It's not. Your job as a leader is to lead a team in a manner that people choose to stay working for you as a leader. That's your role as a leader. And
Amen.
So you got to select right, and you got to engage right. And so I'm going to cover get your perspective on both of those things. So the people understand a little bit more about how you got to where you are today. Tell us where you started and what your transition and what your migration was like.
Well, I was born in a small town.
Yeah.
I won't go back that far, but
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah, background.
Skip the hospital.
Yeah, background. I built and sold a couple of companies, and my grandfather used to say to me, "Business would be easy if it wasn't for the people," and I completely agreed with that. But I'm fascinated with what drives human potential, and eventually I wrote the book The Sales Boss, which was published by Wiley, and got some notoriety around that, got inside some great organizations. And anytime you're trying to fix a sales problem, what you're really trying to fix is a people problem, right? Because every problem in a business ends up being a human problem, and every human problem ends up being a leadership problem. And so the latest book, Unrecruitable, How to Build a Team Your Competitors Can't Steal or Beat. I think it's been 6 years since The Sales Boss came out, and I thought business has fundamentally and radically shifted in that decade. And you need to have, so I thought there was time for a new perspective on really thinking about how do we get great humans. And of course, in our technology, WhoHire, we help companies sort and filter and all of that sort of thing. So they go really hand in hand.
Yeah, if you think about the 6 year period of time, of course, that COVID sits at the sort of the early stage of that, right? And for those people who've been listened in and participated in our programs before, know that I talk a lot about the word reset, as opposed to the Great Resignation. There was a false image that came out of it. People were quitting the workforce and were leaving and were moving to the mountains and doing yoga. And that wasn't the case, was it? There was a reset that was going on. But you would have thought that reset, once we got out of COVID, that would have tempered down. But it's even more prevalent today, I think, than it ever has been, hasn't it?
Yeah. Once people saw the light, they were unwilling to go back to the dark cubicles and factory machines. This sort of idea that people should just work for a paycheck and that their work life is sort of one-dimensional, I think is an older thinking. People want to work with organizations that inspire them to be greater. And I write in my book that people will continue to work for you for as long as they believe they can do their best work of their life working for you. And the minute that's no longer true, they're recruitable. They're going to go somewhere else. So as a leader, your dream has to be big enough that everybody else's dream on your team can fit inside of it. but also in a way that's never been true before. People are looking for identity. They're looking for leaders. We're in a society that is devoid of real leadership.
Hmm.
And people crave that. So if you can fill that space within the company that you're building, one, your life's going to be better, easier. You're gonna, it's going to be more productive, more profitable. But I also think you're just going to feel better because you're actually adding value into society rather than just, producing revenue or a product.
Yeah, when you say that today society is devoid of leaders, tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I think as you look at society, there's so much controversy, and the algorithms sort of feed short attention spans, short, like controversy fire. So it's really difficult for somebody to stand out as somebody that people want to follow. And that has to be, sort of a 360, a whole human.
Hmm.
So, your fitness, your faith, your family, your finances, like all of the things that we would say causes people to feel like they have a nice balanced life. You have to be able to hold that in a very authentic way as a leader. And I think society has become fragmented enough and afraid enough. I mean, you look at all of the HR regulations that we have. People are even as leaders, they're afraid of getting sued, so they don't get close to their employees. They are afraid they're gonna, get accused of having some bias, and so or being erased. And we've sort of created this culture of where we would rather almost stand for nothing so that we don't offend anyone rather than stand for something and stand against other things. And I think the beauty of society is when we can have really vigorous debate, but it's not caustic. No, we're not creating enemies out of people. We're not going to war with each other as human beings.
Yeah, you and I were talking before we got online about that. We're both five behaviors of a cohesive team warriors. I mean, we're both
Love it.
passionate about that subject,
Very.
and especially when we're talking about it. I'm the non-conflict guy. I grew up
Yeah.
in a family. I became the court jester, make
Yeah.
everybody okay. And I found out that I find it ironic that today I lead conflict
Resolution.
resolution types of situations and stuff. But I had to recognize that conflict um, can either be productive or destructive. And our job
Yeah.
as a leader, if you're trying to create this unrecruitable atmosphere, is that you encourage conflict, but it's productive conflict because in order to have productive conflict, you have to have people have to have a voice.
Yeah.
You know,
Now I'm going back a few years, and you're making me fond of the five behaviors, the teeter totter, right? With
yeah,
the conflict being like artificial harmony on one end, and then
yes,
the gates of hell on the other.
you bet.
And
Yeah,
most companies sort of lean towards this artificial harmony.
yeah.
Let's keep peace. Let's not offend anybody. But actually, the best place to be is as close to the tipping point as you can be to the gates of hell.
Hmm.
So most of the time it's pretty good, but you have that healthy conflict, and that means occasionally you're going to slip over and you're going to get really sliding towards unproductive conflict, and that ability to reset. One is a great human skill to have, but especially in a leadership position, you have to be very comfortable with conflict. I write in the Sales Boss book, is if you want to be a great leader, you have to be comfortable sitting in judgment
Hmm.
because it's going to require it. But there's a difference between being comfortable sitting in judgment than needing to sit in judgment.
Hmm.
And we've all probably reported to somebody or had somebody in our life that needed to just have an opinion and render judgment. That's not leadership. The
Right.
willingness to do it, because everything is everything in a business and even outside of business is really a standards, right? Our identity comes from the standards we have. And so the moment as a leader, we say we have a standard and we see that that standard is unmet and we don't mention it, then it's no longer a standard.
Hmm.
And that's that erosion that's happening is people are afraid to say, hey, there's a standard of the way we do things here.
Yeah, and standard what is right, and each company what is right is going to change. What's right for that company their situation, their environment, their people. And so when you look at this, what's the nerve center of the book? I don't want to make this a infomercial, but I'm just intrigued by this concept of unrecruitable. What's the nerve center of what you write about?
Well, part of my past that I skipped was that I grew up in a religious cult and I left that. Being in that environment really allowed me to observe what is it that creates people's identity and how far people are willing to go and what they're willing to give up to preserve identity, an identity of belonging in a group, and also how identity shapes people and what is the process of that. And so the book really centers around if you want to build an unrecruitable team, one, you as the leader, you have to be the billboard, right? You have to be attractive, and you have to attract people whose identity fits inside of the identity you want to construct. So what kind of business do you want to have? Because when somebody's identity is fulfilled within an organization, they become unrecruitable.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk a lot about how do you engineer those things in a way, like we talk about culture a lot, right? When you're talking, but I don't think people really understand culture.
Yeah, culture is a buzzword. I mean, it's an important word.
It is,
but give us clarity on that.
But it can actually be engineered, meaning you can create your culture and make it anything you want, but it has to be thoughtful. So when I work with organization, we talk about this in the book. I want to take people through an audit that I call the Think, Feel, Act audit, because you cannot control how somebody acts until you can control their thinking. So I'm really big into thought control. I mean, every cult is, right? But you can use it for good, and you should use it for good. And the truth is, we're all having our thoughts controlled by something, right? So if you're bringing people into your business, you're controlling people's thoughts anyway. Might as well control them for good. So what do I mean by think, feel, act audit? Well, first, what is it that you want people to think when they are choosing you as the place they're going to work? And if you go into most organizations and you quiz the management team, they don't know. They'll slightly disagree. But if you had to get every leader on your team, say, just in a sentence, what do you want people to think? That's where you have to get clarity. So as an example, one client I worked with, they said, well, they finally got down to, we want people to think that we build champions. That's their core. I want to, like, if people think my company, we create champions, they're going to want to join our team. Well, thinking causes people to feel things, right? So if you can genuinely get somebody to think, hey, this company can build champions, then you're like, I want to be a part of it because I want to grow. And I see myself as a winner and I like to compete. And then I'm going to act in a certain way. And then that's one human in your business, right? And another human comes in and they see that person, they go, oh, I think this company can create champions. And I'm going to feel, oh, I want to be a part of that team. And then I'm going to act a certain way. And pretty soon that becomes culture. Now, where does this fall apart for companies? They say that this is what we want people to think. We create champions. And I want the owners, the leaders in the organizations to audit their entire business. So literally, we'll go out and stand in the parking lot and look at the front of the building and say, if you had to 100% judge your company just based on the outside of your building and what you want people to think, what are you going to give yourself? A 1 is, we suck. A 3 is, hell yes, we nailed it. There's no real in between. If you want an unrecruitable culture, and then you should do that in your lobby, you should do it in your bathrooms, you should do it in your lunchroom, you should do it in your emails, you should do it on your webpage, you should do it in your onboarding trading. Every single touch point has to be audited against that standard of, does looking at this, experiencing this, cause me to think you guys know how to create champions? Because if you don't, then that's where hypocrisy comes into place. That's where this loosening of the threads happens, right? So as an example, I was working with this company says, we want to create champions. And we stand out in their parking lot. And they have a horrendous turnover problem, by the way, which is why I was out there. And they got a metal building, and they got an old vinyl sign hanging up that looks like it's been there for a decade and a half, and it's sort of tattered, faded, been in the California sunshine, and it says now hiring, competitive pay, apply within.
Mm.
And you walk up the ramp to the front door, and it's pop marked and sort of got grease stains, and you get to the door, and it's got a sign on its peeling says ring the bell, and it's slightly dusty. And if you don't notice the sign, you pull on the door and the door is locked. Now,
Mm.
does that cause you, as a person checking this company out, to go, they create champions here? No,
No, no,
not a
no,
chance.
no. What you described was Rocky's first gym.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's it. Yeah.
yeah.
So, but that insight, nobody's going to walk in and go, oh, I didn't think you guys were a great company and I consider another because the outside of your building. But all of us, we have this ability to walk in and say, is this environment congruent with what people are claiming?
Mm-hmm.
And it's either additive to that or it's taking away.
Yeah, it's you use the phrase, and I love words. I'm
Yeah.
sensitive to words because words are sparks that create images in our mind.
Yep.
Right? And so when you talk about controlling thought, uh, somebody might be listening in going, "This sounds really manipulative." And I'm getting a different impression around this word of controlling thought. And I'm going to replace it in my mind. It's not as much controlling thought as what do I want my people to be focused on? And as a leader,
Yeah.
can I be focused on that so that when they look at that, it's going to cause them to think about, in the example you gave, excellence.
Yeah.
Right. And
And the
so
only
you,
the only difference is I don't want to give anybody any choice.
mm-hmm,
If you come into my environment, you're going to think we create champions.
right. Yeah.
That's it. Like there's no other thought possible about me when somebody comes into my
Because
organization.
they're going to see that in all aspects of
Yeah.
things. It's going
And
to be
if
part of the
they
environment or whatever.
don't see that, or if they see that and it's offensive, like they still have choice, but if they're like, I don't want to think that way,
And then they're
they'll
not.
opt out.
Yeah, because what
That
happens is this whole thing about being unrecruitable is that, um, what I preach about is that for leaders to be magnets. Your job is to
yeah.
be a magnet to attract the type of people that you're looking for that follow your, where faith fits into your
Yeah.
mission, where compassion fits into where passion or persuasion fits in. How do you attract people along those lines then,
Yeah.
so you can shepherd them?
Think about this particular company. They decide, okay, we got to change things. They do their whole audit. So now you pull up to the building, and instead of the tattered sign, there's three images, big images of people that now work for the company. Has their name, and it says, here's where they worked before, and here's what they earned, and here's what they're doing now, and here's what they earn.
Mm-hmm.
And a big thing over the top that says, we create champions. You walk up the walk way going up to the front door is a red carpet, and they've got signs along there that say, only champions tread here.
Mm-hmm.
Different? Super simple. This company was spending $20,000 a month on Indeed ads because they just were a body factory.
Mm-hmm.
That whole redoing all of that's less than a $10,000 one-time expense.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we have leaders who just continue to throw money and process and SOPs at humans. Meanwhile, all you have to do is step away enough and go, how do I control people's thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I can control their thinking, I can control how they feel, which will control how they act. And everybody's that way. Everybody's that way. So you could use it for good. Yes, people use it for bad. That's why there's cults. That's why there's 100 organizations you'd look at and you go, I don't want anything to do with that. But everybody's thoughts are controlled by something. Like I scroll through Facebook, something pops up, my thoughts are controlled.
Mm-hmm.
I turn on the news. Which channel do I choose? I'm choosing which thought control I want.
Mm-hmm. Because that's the one that's speaking to you. So, the what's the biggest mistake that you've found in the selection process that that interferes with building an unrecruitable environment?
I think the biggest mistake is people feeling like they're a great judge of character.
Tell me
Like
what you mean by that.
I have a, you talk to people, they're like, yeah, I have great gut instincts.
Oh, the gut instinct thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got gut instincts. I'm good at hiring. I think
Hmm.
that's the flaw they make. And because if people's gut and intuition really served them that well, we wouldn't have a 50% divorce rate in this country.
Right. Very much
Right?
so.
Like who we're married to is like one of the key fundamentals of how our life's going to go. And so we mess it up half of the time. So gut and intuition doesn't serve people well. So the selection process, the mistake people make is, I believe fundamentally, it doesn't matter what business you're in. You're not in that business. If you have an HVAC, plumbing, you have a consulting company, you're not in that business. You're in the business of humans,
Hmm.
finding humans, inspiring humans, growing humans. That's your business. Your humans can be in that other thing you do, but not you, not your
That's right.
leadership team.
Yep.
But that then means that the process for finding, filtering, attracting, bringing humans in, onboarding humans, keeping humans is the single most important function in a business. And yet it's treated like an afterthought. A lot of times companies, they got somebody coming in for an interview and you got some executive running around going, hey, where was their resume? Yeah. Oh, because they
Hmm.
got 100 other things and they sit down and they go sit across from a person. Oh, okay, let's talk. Tell me about where you're from.
Right. And what they do is they look for, I call them connection points.
That's it.
Where I connected with this person, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the wrong focus as opposed to
Yeah.
being focused on the cultural match you're talking about and their ability to perform in the job you're trying to hire them for.
That's right.
That's where the focus should be.
My belief is that every time you say yes to moving a human forward in the hiring process, you should be thinking, I'm writing a $500,000 check.
Hmm.
Because I don't know about you, but when I write a $500,000 check, I sort of think about it. I want to make sure that I'm getting my money's worth,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
let's talk about that $500,000. That's not just a facetious number you're making up, right?
No,
If I'm
yeah,
hiring, when I hire somebody, it's not just how much I'm going to pay that individual, but bringing somebody on board who performs well in their role has huge impact on the bottom line, no matter what the role is, whether it's front desk, AP clerk, salesperson, production line person, or what have you.
that's it.
When I hire somebody and they do not perform well, they erode the culture that you've been talking about so eloquently. You erode that culture, which has huge impact on the bottom line. And so when we
Yeah,
think about that, is that when and that pressure, because I'm sitting there trying not to laugh when you talk about the gut, because you and I've lived in that space, and I heard that like and I tell somebody, that gut feeling you're having right now may be a bad taco.
that's right.
Maybe a bad taco. You got it. So what's the data? What's the data that goes along with that gut that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's why I met a gal, and you and I have similar backgrounds. I discovered in the sense that you're a big believer in pre-hire assessments to sort of get a picture
Hmm.
of who you can hire, and the I met a girl, a gal. I guess it's been about coming up on 6 years ago. She has a great story. She first of her family to go to college, but she grew up in a rice paddy, no running water, no electricity in
Mm.
Taiwan. She's an amazing data scientist and IO psychologist. And I was out speaking at a conference based on my book, and I was talking about all the assessments. And in fact, PI, the assessments that you, I believe, use, I write about in my book, The Sales Boss, because I'm a huge believer in them. But
Hmm.
she came up to me and she said, I think these assessment companies are great, but there's, this whole other thing. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, I don't think a business owner really cares if somebody's introverted or extroverted or their interests and, you know, any of that. I think what they actually care about is if I hire this person, will they end up at the top 5% of my organization? And how long will they stay around? So after I've gone through all the brain damage and headache of hiring them, training them, are they going to stick around long enough that I get an ROI on that investment? And
Hmm.
I was like, well, you have a point. And so I spent time getting to know her, getting to know her customers, and that became she had really created a very unique algorithm um, that really helps in the selection process. And we baked that into our platform, WhoHire. So so that it's not complex for the hiring manager. Our data actually suggests that a company to hire one person that's going to be at the top 5% of the organization in terms of performance, they're going to have to interview 160 people.
Wow.
It's humanly impossible, which is why people have the 80-20 rule where only 20% of the people are A players. It isn't that there's not enough A players out there. It's that the organization doesn't have the capacity and the willpower to hold on with the amount of work it takes to find that person.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.